So greetings from the inside of the M24. I'm in the gunner's seat, came in the usual way through the commander's hatch, moved forward. And as you can see, like a lot of tanks in the era, there isn't a whole hell of a lot of space down here. One of the most significant things to note is the lack of a turret basket. Now, this tank was given a post-war modification. It has a footrest for the gunner. Otherwise, as you can see, my legs are just standing on the floor, so as I'd be moving around, especially if the turret was traversing, I would have to shove my legs right or left in order to avoid them from getting caught on anything. This is somewhat inconvenient. Now, traverse is simple enough. You got a choice between manual and powered. Powered traverse, you have a right or left controller, and on the controller is the trigger for the coaxial 30 cal. Alternatively, there is a manual control. Simply push down on the brake release and crank right or left. You see it tends to scrape off against the stowage bins here. There is a shift selector. Currently it is set for manual, but if you go all the way up, you have now disconnected the manual traverse and you're now purely on powered control. Elevation, on the other hand, is a little bit more complicated because we have a gyro stabilizer system in the M24. Ordinarily, your manual elevation is controlled by the typical elevating handwheel. Now, what we have here is a stabilizer engaging switch, below which you'll find the elevating shift release lever. Now, what this will do is, as I push hard over to the right, it will physically disconnect the gears. The gun will then be in free motion and will probably fall forward. Now what will happen with sufficient hydraulic pressure in the stabilizing system, elevation is now controlled electronically through, again, the same elevating handwheel, but transmitted through the hydraulics. The stabilizer itself, in order to tune it, what you have to do is there are two stabilizer rheostats, one for generic stabilization and one for the recoil. So if I let it come all the way up to the top here, so you can see the master gun control boxes, these are the two rheostats. Your standard stabilization, all you do is you find a point target in the distance, engage your stabilization system, drive towards it, and you adjust the stabilizer as you're driving on moderately cross-country terrain so that the gun maintains pointed at the target in elevation. Recoil, however, is a problem because it can only be tested by firing the gun. So by default, you just set it to 5, and every time you fire the gun, you see how far the gun has jumped out of alignment with your target, and you adjust the rheostat setting by trial and error. The gun's electrical firing system is located on the elevating handwheel. There is an alternate firing system. You just slam in on this red plunger here, and that is a manual release for the firing pin. All right, for sighting, he's going to have two sights. He's going to have a periscope sight and he's going to have a direct vision telescope. Periscope sight, this particular one is a simple Unity periscope. However, other forms of periscope sight were available which actually had gun sights. The gun sight periscopes will be a combination of Unity and by 6 power. The Unity sight will be for close range targets and graduated only to 1,200 yards, but the by 6 telescope would be graduated to 4,200 yards. The telescope on the right is either going to be a by 5 M71 kilo or a selectable by 4 or by 8 M83F. This particular one is the M71. Moving back to the commander's seat, it's an interesting little design. This is currently in the open riding position, so if you're just doing a road march, you want to stick your head out high, you just simply sit on this. It'll also fold forward to be a conventional seat, but this of course would be far too high, so what you can do is pull out this little lever here and adjust the seat to an appropriate height that you can sit down, and you can now see with reasonable ease out of the 6 direct vision viewports. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now it's possible to place either a direct vision periscope or very late on an M15A1, which was a binocular sight with bi-6 vision, very useful for observing the fall of a shot. In the back, of course, we have room for the radios. 2 radios could be mounted, an SRC or an AN-VRC3. The antenna for the VRC3 was located on the front right of the turret, and the antenna for the SRC back left. For this, I got to go back outside, open the incredibly simple hatch, lift up. The locking pin will now lock in place. Give it a test. Believe me, one of the last things you want to happen is for this hatch not to be locked, to swing forward and hit you on the head on rough country. Or some worse designs would actually even take your fingers off. Fortunately, this one seems pretty sturdy. His last and probably most fun toy is caliber 50, known as Ma Deuce. As I say, when Ma Deuce speaks, everybody listens. However, it is located on the right rear of the turret. A more useless place for shooting at enemy troops is probably pretty hard to find. I mean, he's fine if he shoots over the right rear quarter of the tank turret, but what's the point of that if you got a 75mm gun and a coaxial 30? You're probably going to be using those. It could theoretically also be used for anti-air purposes, probably more of morale value than anything else. In common with a lot of tanks, what would sometimes happen in the field is Ma Deuce would be moved to a position further forward, central to the turret. So now we've come into the turret. It's cozy. I mean, you'd expect it for a small tank, but definitely nowhere near as bad as some other tanks I've been in. Now, as you're looking around, you'll see that there's no stowage racks for ammunition. There are no ready rounds at all, as near as I can see. All the ammunition is located in the wet stowage bins under the floor. Now, by 1951, they'd stopped with the wet stowage, and the manual doesn't say why, it just says has been discontinued. Either way, you want to load around, lift it up, and you're going to find 8 rounds under the floor. Slap the retainer out of the way, lift up your round. If you got a fuse, set the fuse now. Bring it forward into the breech. Close the ammo bin before you fall into it. And now the fun bit. I have a hand that is more than 75mm wide, so I want to be careful as I'm putting this in. Again, smaller folks probably would have an easier time, and I would very much like to keep my fingers. So here goes nothing. It should go all the way in and then slide hand out of the way. It worked! Okay, so breech block is now slid closed. System is moving to fire, and now hopefully what will happen is as I push the manual release, hammer will fly for correction. So what will hopefully happen is I push the manual release on the far side, trigger will move forward, this will release this lever, which is now free because I've lifted the safety stop, hit off this lever, which is the firing pin, and then set off the round. And here we go, on the way. Simple. Now, in the event of a failure to fire, it is possible to recock. Simply reset the lever, push forward back to the fire position, and try again. To extract the round, use the breech operating handle. Fits on top of the breech block. Simply crank forward. Make sure it's locked in position. Remove the handle. Return it to position. Extract the round. Extract the round. There we go. And you're done. Right, the last item of note on the right-hand side of the turret is a coaxial machine gun, Browning 1919 usually. Electrical solenoid. However, in the event that the electrical firing system doesn't work, there is the manual backup. You just pull the trigger yourself.